Hi, I'm Kara.
And I'm Adam, and welcome to Crunchy Cozy Games. So we have been counting down our top 100 games of all time.
That we played last year.
That we played last year, of course. And now, hey, we did it. We're halfway there. So now we start getting into the games that are just like really, really good. And actually, when I sat down to review what I'm talking about on this list, we were talking about, well, maybe we'll record the video and then maybe we'll play something. And it's gotten late. So those options are kind of dwindling by the minute.
Yeah.
But I think there's one on my list this time around that I saw and I was like, oh yeah, that would be a perfect game to play tonight.
Me too, actually.
Really? I wonder if it's the same one.
I think what's going to happen now that we're in the upper half, I think that we are more likely to see our lists converge a little more.
Yeah.
I think, when we were in the lower half, there were definitely, we were kind of trading off, things that had fallen off of the other person's lists. I think, as we get up closer, we're going to really see where our tastes really do kind of align more than it seems like they have so
We do
far.
actually get along, just so everybody's aware.
And we do like a lot of the same games.
Well, and I think that to be said, what have been some of the surprises on my list that you have felt like, oh, that's ranked a lot lower than I thought?
I was really surprised by how low Dinosaur Island ranked on your list. That's one.
And Dinosaur Island was one that when we played the first time, I was like, oh, this is neat. I really was into it. And I think that was just because we played it with two players.
Yeah.
And, one thing that happens, I think, when you play a game a lot of times is you start to reveal kind of the aspects of the gameplay or maybe the flaws of the game that you didn't notice before.
Sure.
Because, the first time you play something, you're kind of like, oh, hey, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily get the full feel for it. Oh, hey, Rico's back.
There we go.
And I think in repeat plays, Dinosaur Island, as we talked about in the video, it just kind of suffered from having gotten to the end of it and basically we used every piece that was available to us.
Yeah. So I think that was one of the biggest surprises on your list. What about me? What was a big surprise for you?
Well, Dwellings of Eldervale.
Well, okay.
Obviously.
Okay, I said surprises.
That was surprising to me. That one was definitely surprising to me. I really resonated with that game a lot. I think it's just so cool. We're absolutely going to be talking about it later, much later. So I was just surprised that it fell so low on your list.
Yeah, but I mean, based on the playthrough that we had,
sure,
and what you knew about my feelings,
right?
I'm surprised that you're surprised.
Well, and that's just one where I think that we have to play it again.
Absolutely,
and we have to play it with more players.
And we've been saying that pretty much since we played it. So
exactly.
We just got to get it back to the table.
Well, how about we get into it and see if there's anything else that'll surprise each other?
Yeah. So my number 50. Is a game called Small World. Yeah, so this game is very cute. And I think that where the strategy really comes into play is not just like knowing what combinations are going to work really well together, but in knowing when is the best time to like let one go and move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Because the reality of this particular game is that you can't stick with the faction that you start with or the group and the power. Like you have to switch in order to get ahead in the game. And I think it adds some really interesting elements. And we played with 4 people and I thought it was we were like stepping on each other's toes and it was a really fun game.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about that game is, of course, you've got kind of the randomization where you've got like the faction like vampires and then you have the adjective tiles that are placed out, so you might get caravanning vampires or different things like that, which was neat because you get some interesting
combos. Yeah.
I gotta say though, did not make my list.
Really?
It didn't.
Interesting.
And part of it for me was I wasn't in love with the scoring aspect, and I think it was just because it was the first time that we played. I didn't get my head wrapped around the oh, you've got to put a faction into decline.
Yeah.
And you flip them all to gray, and then they don't score that round. I just didn't love that because I was like, I just want to continue using this faction, and you can't. You're not meant to. So it felt kind of like really basic and really fast area control. But I totally understand why people love it.
Small World.
So my number 50 is a sweet little gosh, I don't know what kind of game it would be. It's like a resource management kind of tableau building.
Okay.
And that's Meadow.
Oh yeah.
So Meadow, I thought, was just a darling game. I love the art style, love the cover of the box. It is just very serene and pleasant. It is the epitome of a cozy game.
Yes.
I really like how you draft the different cards that you're going to pick, because
it is a really interesting drafting system for sure.
You've got basically like a grid that all the cards are in, and you place your like arrow token and you slot it into the board somewhere, and then you can either take something in that row or that column.
But then once you've placed yours there, nobody else can use that, and so there comes a point in the round where there are, you know, cards that are completely locked out of use.
Right. Yeah, I found that really interesting. I think it was a little confusing when we were building the tableau of how exactly that worked, and I didn't think that was great. I mean, we worked it out just fine, but I'm interested to go back with that one. We also have the expansion for it, the Downstream, which has an otter on the box, so it'll probably rank higher after we play that.
I think that is one game that is on my list of I would love to play it with more people.
Sure.
Because I think that one of the most fun parts of that game is seeing all of like the creatures and the plants that are on those cards, because the art is gorgeous.
It is.
And I just felt like we didn't really get to see enough of them, and I would love to play it with more people where you're going through more cards.
Yeah.
So that's...
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm looking forward to playing that again.
Yeah.
But my number 50, Meadow.
My number 49 is one that you have talked about that was really low on your list, and that is Calico.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so mean and it hates you.
I love Calico. Like the theme of it just really, I just love attracting cats.
Buttons
and
quilts.
I love blankets.
Yes.
So it is kind of...
There are no less than about 5 blankets within about 10 feet of us right now.
There's never a problem to have too many blankets, right? So I really like the theme. I think that,
fire.
The puzzle is can be really challenging, and like we discussed before, it's really hard to kind of sacrifice one of your objectives. And I think that, the first couple of times that we played with like the recommended starting objectives, and I think that we kind of played that out a little bit and like figured it out. And then I think the first time we played with the random ones, it really screwed with us. And I just love that. I think that, it has really good replayability. I do think that playing it with more people and moving that the shop along is really helpful, since the shop is only 2. However, it can also backfire.
Right, because then somebody is more likely to take that perfect piece that you need.
Yeah.
I will say, in playing that game as well as some of the other puzzly games from Flat Out, it's my least favorite of the puzzly games, and I think the biggest thing for me is that there's no way to reset the shop. Like, you can't pay a resource to just, like, get 3 new pieces. And I think it would really benefit from something like that.
Sure. That's a totally fair criticism. So, yeah, for me, number 49 is Calico.
All right, for me, number 49 is something that I don't believe is going to be on your list. Okay. And that's because it is a card game, a living card game, that we played very recently, Marvel Champions.
Yeah, that didn't make my list.
So I know you're not a big fan of card games, because there's so much that's like, oh, okay, these cards work together and you can use this card to play this card to then combo these cards. And so much of it requires like a working knowledge of the different decks.
It does. You have to put in so much at the front end of it that we just we don't really have the time right now to dedicate to doing that to start a game.
Well, and I think what's really interesting about Marvel Champions is that you get like your hero specific deck, and then you mix in the trait, like it's either Justice or Defender, or
I had Aggression.
Yeah, or Aggression or something like that. And I think that's kind of a really neat system, is that you can make Spider-Man more aggressive, or you can make him more of a defender, or whatever you want. I think the art style is really cool because it is comics.
It is very cool.
I think all the cards, the ones that we played so far, felt really in line with their like heroes, and they're very thematic in that way.
Yeah.
I will say it kind of suffers from the problem of all superhero board games in that, like, why is Spider-Man getting knocked out by a base level thug? You know, why does he have just as much health as that?
Right. I also think that it in the way of so many card games, it suffers a lot from, you know, you're really at the mercy of the shuffle.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
And so, you know, I at the beginning of that game drew cards that had a full hand of cards that were basically useless to me in those first couple of starting turns. And I just found it pretty frustrating at the beginning.
Right.
And you know, as we played through it, I did warm up to it, but it's still not my favorite. I would like to play with different characters and mix up the decks a little more.
A lot of card games actually have something to cover that. Like they have a mulligan rule. If you draw your 7 cards and then they're all super high level, you can
and I think
discard a bunch of them and draw it up again.
Yeah, and
I think we should check for that.
I think there was a part of the round end was you could discard any number of your cards, but
and having not played before, you had a powerful card in your hand that you're like, oh, this is going to be sweet one day.
It was just taking up space. So
but I really enjoy it. I am eager to play that with some different characters. It's one that, as a collector, I know could very easily get away from me and want to collect just boxes and boxes of that. But I had a great time with it, and I'm looking forward to giving it another go. So 49, Marvel Champions.
My number 48 is another one that you've already talked about, which is Hickory Dickory. Yeah, so Hickory Dickory is so cute. I would like to play it with more people so that we can see more of that, you know, the mice knocking each other off the clock hands action a little more. I think that we maybe played it a little nice.
Yeah.
And
it's not
you know,
normal for me.
Well, and we didn't have to knock each other off in order to accomplish the things that we were trying to. Whereas I think when you have more people, you know, that clock hand is only so big, and you can't like sacrifice your own moves to like knock somebody off. Right. Like that's just not good play. Right. So I would be interested in playing it with more people, but I just really enjoyed the uniqueness of that kind of like worker placement. That it was such a unique system. Yeah. Like we don't really have anything else like that. Like that.
You know, there are definitely some other games that you put a worker and then you spin a gear and they go to a different place, but this had kind of a different idea in that you're choosing whether to keep them on or off. Right. And some of that is a little bit of risk reward because, for instance, if somebody jumps on and you're the front mouse, you get knocked off.
Right. So I enjoyed it. I adored the art.
It's very cute.
And the theme was just there for me.
I love the fat mouse that takes up 2 spots. I love him.
Yeah. Number 48, Hickory Dickory.
Okay, my number 48 is my favorite pure party game, and it is one that you've already talked about, and that is Monikers. You know, when I first heard about Monikers, I was kind of like, well, that barely sounds like a game. Like,
it's so fun.
It's basically taking other games and just saying, yeah, okay, we'll do all of that. But the reality is that mechanism works so well because you're doing all of that. So, as you talked about before, in Monikers, you get the same deck of cards, 40 to 60 cards. And each team has a minute on the clock. In the first round, they can say anything they want except for the words that are on the card. So that's kind of taboo style. That's the easy round, though. Sure. In the second round, you can only say one-word clues, which, you know, for some, it's pretty easy. Right. But for some, it would be really difficult if you didn't have knowledge from the first game, because the way that this game really should work is as you're guessing those cards, you're coming up with inside jokes or things that people said to make other people guess it, and then you're essentially just repeating those with one word. Right. And then in the third round, you can't say anything. You can only use gestures, so it's basically just charades. But again, there's some of them, like, you know, there was, like, one of the cards was the woman who poured who had coffee spill on her at McDonald's and sued and won. And it's like, okay, that one might be easy to act out, but how do you give that in a one-word clue? I guess coffee. But again, depending on what other cards are in the deck, coffee might be a clue for something else.
Except you can't say coffee because coffee was in the...
Right,
exactly. It's in the thing. So,
so it's trickier than you think. Even in me explaining it, it's trickier than that. But it is so much fun because you can't play the game without just absolutely laughing.
We were just dying. It was good.
So yeah, that's one I expect to come out far more at parties.
Oh, absolutely.
So yeah, 48 monikers.
My number 47, I don't think we've talked about this one yet. My number 47 is Moonrakers. So this is another, the second of the Studio 4 games that we have. Studio 6, 4?
I think it's just Studio IV, but I don't know.
Studio IV?
Yeah.
I don't know.
IV Studios. It's a Roman numeral.
Yep. Anyways, Moonrakers is a beautiful game. The art is very unique.
Yeah.
It is one that I remember really liking. It has it's a little deck buildy.
There's definitely some deck building to it.
And honestly, it kind of blends together with some of the other space games that we have.
Sure. Space, very popular theme in board games.
It sure is, which is fine.
We should do a top 10 themes we'd like to see in board games.
That'd be really interesting. So yeah, I don't really have a lot else to say about Moonrakers.
I think the interesting thing about that game, and we'll absolutely be talking about it later,
I figured,
is that there's this semi-cooperative nature to it because you're taking these contracts and then rolling a danger dice, and anything is up for negotiation. So you can be like, hey, I will go with you on this mission and I've got extra shields, so I'll roll the danger dice. But as it gets towards the end and you're trying to get 10 victory points, then it's all of a sudden like, okay, I don't want to bring you on the mission, even though you might have the best cards because you might win. Or I'll bring you on the mission and I'll let you have a card, but I'm not going to give you any of the prestige points with this.
Right.
So yeah, I like that game.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Yeah, so number 47 is Moonrakers for me.
Okay, 47 for me is a really great deck building game, and that's Clank. So I just really kind of like the humorous art style in Clank. I also appreciate that it is a deck builder where you feel like you are doing something with a purpose. It's got a little bit more to it than just the pure deck building.
It does.
You're going down into a dungeon, you're kind of taking these different paths and playing these different cards. You have to worry about the dragon that might come out and just wipe you off the map. And then you are basically playing against other players trying to find these different treasures down there.
Right.
And so I think that the deck building by that is, you're constantly getting new cards, which are then fun to play. I also like that when you get a new card, it doesn't just go in your discard. It goes...
Yeah, and I also think that, in a game like this, the deck building doesn't feel like the purpose.
Right.
And I think that's another place where something like Dominion falls short for me, is that the purpose is building the deck. There's nothing else that you're doing.
Yeah.
Right? There's not a goal.
Yeah, I mean,
in
Clank,
this there is.
Right, in Clank, you could very realistically get one of kind of the mid-level treasures and then just be like, okay, I'm going to exit to force everybody else to exit.
Right.
It just depends on how deep in the dungeon you want to go and how risky you want to be. So I thought that game was really cool.
I had a great time playing
Another one, I know we said it a lot tonight, but I would love to play with more players to get in each other's ways.
Yes.
I think that's going to be really fun. So 47 for me, Clank.
Number 46 for me is Dinosaur Island. Yeah.
We've talked about that one tonight.
We have. I really enjoy Dinosaur Island. I think that it is the superior of the two, the Dinosaur World, Dinosaur Island. Yeah. The things that bother me are not a super big deal, right?
Yeah.
I know that when we played with 4 players, we ran out of meeples. That was super annoying.
For me, because everybody else had things that they could put the bad pieces back.
It's absolutely true. Yeah. I was one of those people.
Yes.
But I really enjoy that. I think that the names excuse me. I think that the names of the like locations that you can place are really fun. I just really like that game, Dinosaur Island.
Well, my number 46 again is a game that we have talked about before, and I will say that this is a game that I think my ranking of it was hurt a little bit by your ranking of it.
Oh, really? Interesting.
And by that, what I mean is, so my number 46 is Mythic Mischief, which is a game I really, really like. But what's tricky about this game is that it is a 2-player game. You can play with 4 players, but then you're playing on a team.
Teams.
And I think I would hate that. So I consider this a 2-player game. What kind of brought it down for me is it is a game that's really only fun if both players are having fun. You know, no offense to you, like it's not your type of game, and I totally understand that.
Yeah.
But for me, I love that, like, looking at the board and thinking about the possible movements, and it's almost like a logic puzzle or a math puzzle at that point of like how to solve it. Yeah, in a way, like the pieces all kind of move the same, but they have different abilities. So like they can move the bookshelves around, and then you're basically trying to avoid this tome keeper as it moves around the library and trying to get other players in their path, because if they are, then you get a point. I really love the puzzle behind that. But I also know in playing that I would like set up a perfect turn, and then the tome keeper would take their turn, and you would just be sitting there going like, ugh. And because it wasn't fun for you, I started to feel like, okay, well, now I'm not having fun, because sometimes it's not fun to win that way. And again, that's not I'm not taking joy out of your frustration for that. But it is one that I think if we play more and you start to kind of understand like how different factions work and like what's the perfect opportunity there, I think it's going to grow in enjoyment for both of us.
Absolutely.
So yeah, my number 46, Mythic Mischief, and I'm really looking forward to all the new factions this year.
I am too. I think, this is one that after that first segment of this series, we did actually pull that to the table again. And I had a better time with it than I did the first time. And I think that, I would love to see how different factions interact with each other. Because we played the 2 that we hadn't played before.
That was the zombies and was it vampires?
I was the vampires. We realized that the last time we had played as the wizards and the
Frankenstein's monsters. I guess they're just monsters. Yeah.
But yeah, I would be really interested in seeing how some of the other factions play with each other, and each faction has a different way that they interact with the bookshelves, and seeing how those different things, like how that moves the board around, I think is such a neat concept. It is it's a very cool game. Just like in playing it, I just know I always get frustrated.
Which is totally reasonable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really curious because, at first it seems like there's only so many ways that you can move those bookshelves. And so with all these new factions, I'm curious if it's going to be like, okay, you do that same move, but you move it like 2 squares as opposed to 1.
Yeah.
I don't know yet, so we'll see soon.
Okay, my number 45 is Raising Robots. Yeah, so
very cute.
It's a very cute game. I really enjoy this type of game. This kind of like engine building. It's a solid game. Yeah. It has some really unique things, and I think what really kind of pulled it up for me in my rankings was how just incredibly darling the little robot cards are. Yeah. I just, it kind of made me think of, when you go to like an art fair or a craft fair, and there those like, there's the people that like make stuff out of like found metal. Yeah. Like we have an alligator that's made out of like a bike chain. Yeah. Right? Like it makes me think
nuts
of
and bolts and that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's like that.
It makes me think of that. And I think that it's just so charming. The names are really clever. Right. I think that there could have been some more polish on some of like the gameplay aspect itself, but I also really enjoyed that, you got to do stuff on other people's turns too. Like I really like that kind of interactive engine building rather than just sitting. So yeah.
I think it's worth noting that was one of those Kickstarters that we shouldn't even have it yet. Like
right. It was early.
Due to be delivered in May of this year, and it actually we received it in November of last year. So like a Kickstarter delivering nearly half a year early.
Which is wild.
Yeah. But I agree with you that there's some aspects of it that I'm just like, this doesn't feel like it's quite there. Like I think some of the cards for the actions are a little empty compared to like the robot cards.
Yeah. And I also think, I thought that the mechanism for making the 2-player work was good, but I would like to play it with more people. Where this is the theme of this video, I guess
it really is. This one plays up to 6.
Yeah, I would like to have more dice.
Yeah.
That are being rolled rather than being staged.
I also think that's going to create a neat element of like talking around the table of saying like, oh, are you going to use your like, everybody gets this dice on that action because I could do that on the one that you want.
Right.
Like you can kind of auction that a little bit.
Exactly.
Which would be cool.
And I think that was kind of missing because we were trying to guess which ones were, we were kind of gaming like which dice are left.
Right.
Right. Rather than trying to guess based off of a person. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it was just.
Yeah, I would really want to play this one at 6 players just to see that aspect kind of come to life.
Absolutely.
Then you're basically going to be taking every action every turn, and then it's going to be a game of energy.
Exactly.
So, we got to check that out.
Absolutely. It's going to be super cool. Yeah, so 45, Raising Robots.
45 for me is a game that is just silly fun, not a lot of strategy, but it's hard to deny how much enjoyment we got from it. And that is Camel Up.
Oh, yes.
So Camel Up is a racing game. You've got this really cool little pyramid that sits at the center of the board, and on your turn you can choose to take a coin and shake up the pyramid and drop a dice, and the camel of that dice's color will move whatever number of spaces pops up on the face of that dice. Otherwise, you can actually start placing bids. So based on where the camels are in the round, you can place a bid on that to say that they're going to win this leg of the race or they are going to be the overall winner. And that's really important because, of course, the end goal is to be the player with the most money.
Sure.
You can't do that unless you place the bets.
Right.
And the amount of money that you get depends on when you made that bet. So the earlier you make the bet, the more money you're going to get.
Yep.
The reason this game is so fun is because you can kind of game it out a little bit because there's 1 dice of every color in the pyramid. There's 6 dice, and there's only 5 turns per round. And so you kind of know, like, if the green one rolls a 1 early on, well, odds are that it's not going to win because there's a 2 and a 3 on there. Then another camel is going to roll most likely. But there's always the option that you're going to bet on blue, and the blue dice is the one that's left over.
Right. The thing that's tricky, though, is that there are 6 dice and 6 colors, but 2 of those colors actually move backwards on the board.
Right. Black and white are the crazy camels, and they go the opposite way. But the other thing that we haven't talked about is the camels actually stack.
It's so cute.
And it's very cute. They fit together so nicely. If we ever do our video on, like, board game things that just make us happy, that's absolutely going in there.
Yep.
But whichever camel lands on the space second then lands on top, and it's considered in the lead. Where it gets really fun, though, is when those crazy camels and the regular camels meet. So the regular camel might land on a crazy camel, and then the crazy camel moves them backwards.
Because they take whichever ones are on top of them with them.
Right, exactly. So it is just very silly. It's one of those games where you don't actually care about winning because you just are so interested in the race and how it turns out.
Yeah.
But it is a delight. Number 45 for me, Camel Up.
Number 44 for me is a cozy one. I think it's a cozy one. And that is Takenoko.
Yeah.
I think that it's all about building your like bamboo forest. And like using this gardener to grow different kinds of bamboo, and you have this panda.
Yeah,
it's very cute. I really enjoy stacking the bamboo pieces. And you're kind of building out your own little like bamboo section on your player board, but you're also interacting with like the larger board and doing hexes.
Right.
So I really enjoy the gameplay of this. I think it's really interesting. Like each of the type, like, you know, the panda and the gardener move in different ways. There's like different kinds of objectives based on either bamboo or collecting, you know, I really enjoy this game a lot.
Sure.
It's very cute, very fun, very cozy, and it's, you know, like mildly puzzly stressful.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some conflict when you're playing, but that, you know, it's not like intensive competition.
Right. Yeah, I mean, what's tricky about it is the gardener and the panda can only move in like straight lines. Mm-hmm. And so to get to a specific place that you want them to get might take 2 turns to do that.
And somebody moving it in between can totally mess with it.
Right. I will say this game didn't make my list.
Yeah.
And the reason why, and I actually think that this is a big problem for people that don't know when you're playing against people that do. The objectives are totally unfair.
Sure.
Because, you know, you've got panda goals, which are just you have to eat certain sections of bamboo. Pretty easy to do, mm-hmm. As long as you can move the panda. Then you've got gardener goals, which are just like you have to have stacks of bamboo in certain sections. Mm-hmm. But those are like very specific. It's like you have to move the gardener to a section where it's only 3 tall.
And it has to have water, or it has to have something.
And then the most difficult objectives are the ones that are like the map, because all the tiles have to be irrigated, and if they're not irrigated, it doesn't count. So some of those are just really difficult to do. They take more turns than that, and it's not like they score more points. Like,
right.
If you play this game, and it is very cute, I do enjoy it, but don't bother with any other objectives than the panda ones.
That's fair. Totally fair. Yeah, so for me, number 44 is Takenoko.
Okay, for me, number 44. This is a very quick game. It's a 2-player game as well, and that's Santorini.
Oh, yeah.
So Santorini is just a delight. It's a gorgeous little production where you're basically building these towers.
Well, and the pieces are so satisfying to stack.
Yeah. Is it a little overproduced? Maybe. But I also don't think it would really work without kind of the tower building aspect of it.
It wouldn't.
But what is interesting about this game is that your player, it's a super snappy, quick game. You move and then you build towers. You've got 2 pawns on the board that you can do that. And the way you win is just by ascending to the 3rd level. But the other player is trying to stop you, and so you can only jump up 1 level each time. And so to get to that 3rd level, you've got to go from a stack 2 building to a stack 3 building that's adjacent in some fashion to it. But another player can also put a dome on that.
To keep you from getting to the top.
To keep you from getting to the top. And of course, that effectively locks out
everybody.
That tower.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's kind of this ebb and flow of like you're trying to basically prevent somebody else from getting up to a section that you are and kind of blocking them out, but also trying to not block yourself out.
Yes.
So I also think, you know, it's a game that you can finish in 15 minutes.
It's so fast.
It is a great game for like if we need to decide who's doing the dishes. It's like, all right, there's one way to settle this.
And so I would say, you know, if you think of like Mythic Mischief as like chess, I would say Santorini's like checkers.
That's fair. Yeah, I think that's a good. That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
You talked about the god powers before.
Yeah.
They have those. They make it pretty interesting, but there are combinations that even the rule book is like, this really isn't fair, so don't do this.
Yeah.
We just play without them though, because I think the gameplay is kind of just perfect the way that it is.
Yeah. I think I've mentioned this before, but that's one where I would like to test out a theory. Okay. And try it where we use the god powers not as like you have a single god, but you are drawing them as a deck and it's a single use power.
Oh my gosh.
So you get to use that power once and then you discard and you draw a new one.
So adding luck to a game like this. That sounds like the worst, Kara.
I think, you know, it having a sustained amount of some of those powers is too overpowered or just like super weak. And so I think mixing that up and making it so that you don't have it the whole game would add a really interesting element to it.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll have to try that.
Yeah.
House rules.
Yeah.
So my number 44 is Santorini.
My number 43 is Jaipur.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's just a super cute 2-player game.
Mm-hmm.
It was new to me. I really enjoyed it. The kind of the collecting of the cards to get the resources was really cool, and I like that you're encouraged to do that because the way that the game ends is that the shop, like certain numbers of the shop things, get emptied.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it was a really fun game. It was really quick. Didn't we play twice?
Well, so the game is we played the official game once because it's basically a best 2 out of 3.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah.
So I thought it was really fun, and that's definitely one that I would be really easy to travel with.
Right.
And yeah, I'm looking forward to playing it again.
Was that the game earlier in the video you said, oh, this would be fun to play tonight? Was that the one?
No, but it would be.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, my number 43 is the game that I was talking about.
Okay.
And that is Land vs. Sea.
Oh, that would be fun to play tonight.
So, Land vs. Sea is a really neat, very puzzly 2-player game. And I think this is the section of 2-player games for me and you. But this one's cool because you have these tiles and they have both land and sea on them. You're basically just placing them on a map, connecting land to land and sea to sea based on the hexes that they are in. But they're really creative with the tiles. Like some only have water on one of the 6 side of the hexes, so you can effectively kind of rope it off. What's really neat about this game is the way it's scored, because you basically score all the hexes when you enclose one section of land or one section of sea.
Whichever one of you plays as land and one of you plays as sea.
Right. Sounds simple, but it's actually really tricky because for the other person, they're trying to continue your path as long as possible, because obviously if it ends up not connecting and so it's just the edge of the end of the board, they score nothing for it.
Yep.
There's also an aspect of like once you do close something, you score a point for every like X that's on the tiles. Right. But it's really kind of a neat duel game.
It is.
Where you're just like constantly looking for the option of like, okay, I want to try to close mine off and open yours.
Yes. And there's some of those perfect tiles and it's so satisfying when you can get it. But
there's also like these special tiles, like there is a whirlpool and a volcano, I think.
There's only one of them and it's either one or the other.
Right. And that's basically like if you get all 6 of the hex edges around an empty spot of that specific terrain, you can place that and it scores a ton of points.
So many points.
But your opponent is also watching out for that to stop you however they can. So it's just a really fascinating little game. It is very thinky, but it's also just very satisfying thinky. Like it never feels too difficult because at most you only have 2 dials in your hand to play.
Right.
But yeah, I love that game. I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
43 for me, Land vs. Sea.
All right. 42 for me is Parks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Parks is super cute. I love the art on this.
Beautiful.
It's very much reminiscent of like, posters and postcards as kind of the art style that I think of. And I really like the double meeple aspect.
Yeah.
And something that I think we discovered, because we had mostly played this as 2 players, and then this past year we were able to play it with more.
Right.
And I think that it really forced us to use that the campfire, which allows you to land on the same tile as another player. It really forced us to use that because in 2 players you could be nice and kind of avoid it and just kind of like dink along behind. And you can't really do that when there's 8 peoples on a player board that only has 7 tiles or something like that. 6 tiles.
I think it gets bigger
each
season,
round,
yeah.
But I think that it really forced us to use all of the aspects of the game, and I really enjoyed it at the higher player count. It is also very fun at 2, but I think it really shines when you're forced to to use that.
Yeah, I agree. I liked it a lot better when we played with more people. Mm-hmm. I think it is one of the most gorgeous games in just Beautiful. That the art is so simple and it makes me want to travel.
Yeah.
You know, and
absolutely.
Go see some things.
Absolutely. Yeah, so 42 for me is Parks.
All right. 42 for me is, surprise, another 2-player game. 2-player exclusively game, and this is one that, you know, based on how you feel about like spatial puzzles and how those types of things work together, I was really surprised that you liked this one more than I thought, and you beat me at it. And that is Shobu.
Oh, yeah.
So Shobu is this really simplistic game. You've got these 4 boards.
I feel like Shobu is more checkersy, though.
Yeah, I could see that. But you've got 4 boards, and each of those have 4 stones of your color, either black or white on there. And they start all in the same arrangement. And then the way that the game works is on one of the 2 boards that's closest to you on your turn, you have to take a non-aggressive move. So that is moving one of your pieces, however many spaces that you want in the, like you can move up to 2 spaces in any direction. But that first move, you can't collide with another player's piece. And then on any of the different boards, you can take, any of the different color boards, you've got a kind of light board and a dark board. But if you did your first move on a light board, on either of the 2 dark boards, you can then make an aggressive move where you have to do the exact same thing.
Move, yeah.
So if you moved 2 spaces diagonally to the right, you have to move 2 spaces diagonally to the right on that board. But this time you can knock another player's piece. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to knock their pieces off the board. And if you knock off all 4 of their pieces on any individual board, you win the game. So I probably made it sound more difficult than it is.
It's harder to explain than it is to play. I think it's one of those that you kind of just have to play a couple of turns.
But it is so cool and so, I mean, just like fascinating because you're essentially moving one thing to set up another. And it's, I think, one of those great games where I feel like our game ended with me having all these meticulous plans of, I'm going to win in 3 moves, and then you just won. And I was like, wait a minute, hold up. Just didn't account for the right things. But yeah, it's so cool. I really enjoy that one, and I can't wait to do it again.
Yeah.
42, Shobu.
My number 41, this is the one that I was talking about. But now I'm rethinking that because I know that it is not your favorite. My number 41 is Splendor.
Oh yeah, I like Splendor.
I think Splendor it's so fast. I mean, that's really kind of what was making me think it would be really fun to play tonight.
Maybe this will be the time that I win.
Maybe. It's so fast. The chips that are the gems are so, like, the pieces are satisfying.
The poker chips.
The poker chips. They're, I really enjoy the like store where you're kind of like building your engine and being able to get up to the higher ones.
Right.
I really enjoy the like reserving cards aspect of it because I think it really allows you to set yourself up.
I just have to remember to do it.
Yes.
That's the thing. Because they also they entice you to reserve the card because you also get a wild gem.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a strategy too, is to have those so that people can't tell what you're going for.
Right.
So I think that there's multiple layers.
So they know what you're going for because you took the card. No, but I hear you. I know.
You know what I mean? Like, when you're projecting it too much, you're asking to be blocked. Right?
This feels like a personal affront.
Anyways.
I won't stand for it.
For me, number 41 is Splendor. I think it's really just a classic.
Yeah.
And it's
for a reason.
Yes.
They
so
have
good.
So many different themes for this game now. I mean, there's a Marvel theme where you're collecting the Infinity Stones.
I think the Infinity Stone one sound like that is a great theme for this game.
I don't know if this was just in Japan, but they just released a Pokemon one as well. And I don't know what that's like if you're collecting different Pokeballs or like different types, but interesting. They also just last year or 2 years ago, they released a dual version of it.
Oh.
Which I'd be super curious to try.
Ooh, yeah.
Because that is just meant for 2.
Yeah, it is another one where I do prefer it at 3 or 4 people, just because it's, again, that aspect of, like, there's not really a way to clear the store, right? And so, you know, if you have more people pulling cards, then the cards turn over more. Again, it does mean that you're less likely to get the card that you want, but it does keep things moving a little more. And there are more objectives available with, like, the nobles that you're trying to entice.
Right. All right. Well, my number 41 to close out today is a game that you've already talked about, but I think is just a delightful, fun little game. Maybe not in the way of strategy, but I think it's a great game to either start or to cap off a night, and that is King of Tokyo.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, King of Tokyo, as you've talked about before, it's basically Yahtzee with kaiju monsters. You know, every turn you get 3 rolls to shake up those dice, pour out the dice, and then they've got different faces on it. Either 1, 2, 3 victory points, or you've got a smash, or you've got a heal.
Yeah.
Or I guess you do have
the energy,
which gets allow you to, like,
buy cards,
buy special powers. Sometimes the special powers feel a little uneven, and sometimes they're just really expensive.
Yeah, and you know, some of them are definitely overpowered.
Yeah.
Because there's some of them that are just like little one-time use, like I get a point, or you know, I'm gonna heal 4.
Right.
But then there are some that are like sustained that give you like ongoing powers, and I think that some of those are maybe a little.
Well, and there's some there's like that extra head or something like that when you die you just get to come back with like 4 health points, but you lose everything.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, okay, that feels a little unbalanced. But I think they do actually do a great job in that game of giving it an end, in that somebody can just win the game with victory points. Like, you don't have to defeat all the monsters.
Absolutely.
Which is, you know, a viable strategy. So I think that game is just so enjoyable. I think the monsters are a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We have never played King of New York.
We have not.
It's kind of the same thing, from what I understand. It's one of those that I would love to just have all the monsters for, just because they're so silly and so fun.
They are. They don't really have any meaning.
No.
Like, it has no impact on the actual game.
Nope. None at all. And I think that's also kind of fun.
Yeah.
I am super interested in the cooperative one that they put out.
Yes, I would like to do that too.
So we'll have to keep our eye for that one.
For sure.
But yeah, my number 41 to close out this list, King of Tokyo. So that's going to wrap it up for the first list. In the bottom half, that's a weird qualifier.
Top half?
The top half? Sure. Bottom half? Yeah, I don't know. Depending on how you look at it.
50 to 41.
For me, this has been super fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I love kind of putting them all in a list and getting to talk about some of our favorite games.
Yeah, I like seeing the differences in how we, you know, because as we've talked about before, we're basing these rankings off of the exact same playthrough.
Right.
And so it's really interesting to see where they end up on our lists, based on that single play.
Yeah, and the other thing that I'm super excited about is I hope that we get some game recommendations from the people that are watching. You know, especially as we get further down the list, you're going to find out more and more about our taste, what kind of games we like. So if you've got the perfect game for us that you think we should absolutely try out, let us know in the comments, because we would love to hear it.
Yes.
As always, be sure to like and subscribe, because we'll keep you updated for when we release our next post. And our planned kind of post list is going to be talking about some aspects of games that we really like.
Yeah.
Like, we kind of teased it a little bit here, you know, things that we find very satisfying in board games. You know, your kind of top 10 lists that you might not see on a typical top 10. So be sure to keep coming back and checking out the content that we put together.
Yeah, we're really excited.
Thanks for stopping by.